Welcome everybody to our webinar, Virtual Teams and Vulnerability. I'm excited to have Adam Oliver joining us in a little while. He's from Telstra, SA and Northern Territory, working in the area of enterprise and government. And he'll be joining us because he's one of the rock stars that I know who has been leading virtual teams for a number of years. And as we've been navigating the changes and the vulnerability of COVID-19 and asking our teams to work in different ways in different locations, I'm getting a lot of my clients asking the question, how do we make our virtual teams hum? Now, as we move through, feel free to jump in. There's a little chat bar at the top of your screen. You can type in questions at any point. We'll do our very best to get to them all. And we'll also have some time at the end for questions. So let's get started. These are some of the messages coming back from Adam's teams. Now, we use a very special pulse tool with Adam's group called TeamGauge, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. But just as a snapshot, this is what's been coming through. I think in the current times, we could not be better prepared as a team to work together and to lean on each other. And someone also saying, living into our values, let's be kind. We're all experiencing first times right now. So Adam, with that as a lead-in from your team, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. It's great to have you with us here today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Anna. Absolute pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to the chat. And I've been leading virtual teams for probably about 10 years. You know, never more than ever in these kind of unprecedented times has all of that experience kind of coming together for me to use as we go through these, you know, very tough times. So looking forward to the chat today.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Fantastic. Now, I know we came together probably a year ago now when your team was doing some work around Brene Brown's Dare to Lead curriculum. We're not going to dive into too much detail in that now, but I am curious, when you think about this concept of virtual teams, and particularly with the backdrop of a lot of uncertainty and anxiety and newness surrounding virtual teams, what has been your experience both a year ago where you started with a new executive team and its own challenges, and also where you find yourself as a team today tackling, you know, indeed new ways of working again?
Yeah, good question, Anna. Look, for us, so a bit of context in terms of you know, how our team works. So we have a very geographically split team. We also have a matrix structure inside our organisation. So we've got 19 members of our extended leadership team, and they sort of reside all around Australia. And also, you know, not everyone reports to me. In fact, that's probably the beauty of why this is such a rich conversation. The extended leadership team, you know, as you said, a year ago, we got together to really define what our purpose was going to be and build out our plan. But more importantly, to commit to work to each other and to really rumble with vulnerability and use the TeamGauge tool that you mentioned as well to really track our progress. So, you know, that to me is a virtual team. You know, you don't have any more challenges than that, right? Geographically dispersed, matrix structure, but the way we really come together with this incredible group of leaders really amazes me, and I absolutely love leading this team.
Yeah, beautiful. So that is a fantastic lead-in because it's fair to say the whole space that virtual teams work in, and where you've come from over the last year in setting up that executive team with a matrix restructure, has had immense amounts of vulnerability. Now, I know, you know, welcome to all of the graduates who are in our Brave Business Forum community. You're probably intimately familiar with this concept of vulnerability. But for those of you who are new or maybe joining us for the first time, quick snapshot on vulnerability. This is a concept that has come out of over 400,000 pieces of data from Dr. Brene Brown's last 20 years of research. And vulnerability is simply the intensity of emotion that we feel when we're facing risk, uncertainty, or emotional exposure. And if we think about, you know, the vortex that we're operating in right now, we are all facing immense amounts of vulnerability, whether that be leading a virtual team, figuring out how to, you know, parent your children from home while they're homeschooling, and a whole range of other things in between. So Adam, you mentioned, part of that journey has been about learning what vulnerability is and rumbling with it, both for yourself as a leader, but I imagine also in supporting, those executive team members.
Yeah, look, I think one of the commitments we made as a group coming out of the workshop on vulnerability was all about just committing to be really brave and committing to be vulnerable. And one of the things that we've done, every single fortnight that we come together, is that we have a rumble with vulnerability at the start of every single meeting, and that gives everyone an opportunity to just share what's on their mind. And these, I would say, were fairly surface level at the beginning, but as time's gone on over the last 9 to 12 months, I've really noticed the depth of conversation and the amount that people are sharing about themselves and about their situation has really increased. We get comments now that I love coming to these meetings just to, sometimes when I share what I'm sharing, it's just nice knowing that other people are in the same boat as me. And I think that, fostering the right culture, but just committing to being open and how we behave and react when people are vulnerable in our meetings as well is just as important. And as I said, I've got some really amazing, brave leaders that not only share really good things about themselves, but are able to provide a really supportive environment for others as well.
Yeah, okay. We were having a bit of a chat before we went live today, and one of the concepts that you shared, which I thought was really insightful, was the space that we're working in of virtual teams, where not everybody has a home office, where some of us are working off the dining table, some of us might be scrawled away in a corner hoping that a dog doesn't walk past in the background on an important meeting. And I think you shared it, and correct me if I get my words wrong, this idea that, we have a whole other window right now into our employees' worlds. And that is a great privilege, but it also can be intensely vulnerable for leaders and team members to navigate.
Yeah, look, it's tough. We've had 25,000 people at Telstra transition to work from home literally in the space of a few days. So very early on, we kind of over-indexed on checking in on our people, helping them set up and get ready. Some people work remotely, infrequently, but when you are permanently moving to work from home, there's a few extra things to consider. So that first stage is about sort of preparing our people and supporting our people. And then we sort of started to over-index on the check-in, making sure everyone was okay. Because it is, you're right, and we get a window into people's world, and with all the uncertainty going on around the globe at the moment, there are some people that are sort of challenged with this. But I think we overdid it a little too, because we became a little bit too over-indexed on the check-in, and we're checking in on our daily stand-ups, making sure everyone was okay, and the team were like, we've got it, we're good, you can back off now. And now we're sort of shifting more to how do we, provide that right level of support for our teams, and start to also now look at, how do we continue to shift into the right gear to support our customers just as well, or if not even better than we have in the past. So we do have that luxury of seeing a different window into people's world, and I think it's a privilege. Yes, we see the dogs walk past in the background, or people bring their kids up. I think that's beautiful. I think as leaders, we just need to tap into that, harness that, and because of the cues we can't see anymore, because we're not seeing people in the office every day, just be a little bit more aware of how people are at and where they're at.
I love that concept of that it's evolving, right? We're not expected to know how to do this virtual team leadership perfectly straight up, that you are going to experiment. There is going to perhaps be a little bit of over communication initially, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think better to over check in initially. But what I'm hearing from you is be prepared as well to listen to your team members who might be saying, my technology is good, I've now got a chair at home that actually fits, and allows me to be seen on my webcam. I don't need you checking in on me, every day or twice a day. So be prepared to kind of shift gears as well and listen to the team. This is a great opportunity, Adam, now I think to check in with those we've got online joining us today. And the question we've got for you all is, what are some of the challenges you're facing as you navigate virtual team working, either as a team member or as a leader? So if you can jump onto your chat bar, folks, it's on the top right hand corner, and type in what are some of those wobbly moments, those challenges where you're not quite sure if you're doing the right thing, and we'll unpack some of those with Adam. Now, while we're getting people to think through that, I'm just going to work through some of the challenges I know I've faced and might be common to some of the folk out there as well. So let's have a look. Look, connectivity, straight up, this is a challenge, I think, for many of us. This is where we really test what home broadband package we had, whether or not we've got the right technology. And I know for me, I've had to experiment with different times of day where it's easier to jump on, where the load's not so high. I've had to upgrade my camera so people can actually see me properly. And all of that's a bit new, and on any given day can feel scarier than other days. Homeschooling, whew, I don't know about you all out there, but this is coming right at me. We've got 5 kids, so homeschooling and how we manage a rhythm in the house that works, and still get work done, be available for clients, and kind of not go insane is an ongoing challenge in my virtual world. We have some anxiety. Literally today I jumped on and we're getting feedback on a mic, and my mind is going, the first thought is, holy heck, what the hell's going on? I must look so unprofessional to everybody. So with newness and the vulnerability that brings, and first times, we are going to experience more anxiety, and our ability to kind of lean and soften into that and to hold space for other people's anxiety, I think is an opportunity through virtual working to get more connected and more supported than we might otherwise if we're just in our comfort zone the whole time. Visibility, how do we know what our people are working on, whether they need help, and whether we're going to hit deadlines? When we don't have that same, I can walk past your desk and say, how's the deadline tracking? And this last one, I don't want to underestimate this, boundaries. Adam and I are going to jump into this in a minute, but when we're working virtually, we have to renegotiate what is okay and what's not okay, because we don't have that face-to-face time. Sometimes that means we have to dig a bit deeper with our teams and conversations around how we deliver in a world where we're asking people to deliver within their actual home. So just going to pause for a moment and have a look at the screen. Some comments coming through. Let's have a look. Yeah, staying connected to others when I'm working from home and others are not, that's hard. I'm really comfortable seeing my colleagues from me at home, but it's a little bit more challenging with my clients. Not sure of the appropriate protocol. I love that. That came from Leanne. I have to say, I was on a teleconference the other day with some clients that operate out of Queensland, and I was halfway through my sandwich and the Zoom call started early, and I literally froze. I was like, is it okay to eat a sandwich in a meeting with a client? New territory, right? Didn't quite know what to do and really didn't want to look, kind of naff with sandwich hanging out of my mouth. So some great questions in there. Someone else saying, look, we're strapped to the screen. We're no longer walking to meetings. Yeah, so there's that whole self-care and that kind of, can we overdose on screen time? And that's probably a good cue into you, Adam, that always being on in a virtual world. How have you managed that for yourself? And what tips and tricks have you found help with yourself and or with your team?
Yeah, this is real-time learning at its absolute best, because we're being thrust into a situation and really just having to kind of assess where we're at each and every day. And for me, the biggest thing I'm struggling with this move to working from home is just the lack of bounce, like bouncing things off of people, walking past, walking through the office, saying good day to the team. I'm really missing that. I think as a result, I've started to check in and put a few extra things in the diary and start to bounce ideas off of people. So now the diary's filling up like you wouldn't believe. But I guess it's landed in a place for me, which is now starting to try to prioritize as much as I possibly can. So, I think that the checking with the team is really important, and trying to still make some time to have that bouncing of ideas is important. And it's okay if that's in a little bit more of a structured fashion, because we're dealing with the blockers that we're faced, which is we can't just go and jump in a meeting room, get around a whiteboard physically, but there's nothing stopping us from doing it virtually. So I think sometimes just challenging the norm and doing it. I know I've surprised myself by just getting a document up, getting some people on a video call and making some notes. We're getting some pretty cool collaboration out of that. So it's staying really aware, I think, is important, challenging yourself, but also not putting too much pressure on yourself. I think that's what's really critical as well. I know, like you, Anna, I got my 2 kids at home. We're not there now. I certainly don't have a Telstra band in the background at home, but you know, when I'm at home and the kids are there, what have I learnt? I've built a little bit of a structure so the kids know exactly what to do during the day, and it's less interruptions for me, but also I'm giving them some things to do and creating some time for me to feel good and spend some time with them and not feel pressured to be working as well. So there's a lot to work through there, but I think being really aware, challenging yourself, but also not putting too much pressure on yourself is what I'm learning in the moment right now.
Yeah. That whole concept you're just tapping into, which is so rich, of self-compassion. We're sometimes our hardest critics in terms of what we should be doing, or we should be able to get a document to live share on a screen. I wanted to pause though, Adam, because a great comment's come through I wanted to share from Janet. She's talking about authenticity. So she comments, I love the authenticity of the working from home and video conferencing with clients. The pretense seems to be reduced. We're real. People are accepting of kids around dogs, I think, and I love the genuineness and vulnerability. I don't know about you, Adam, but for me, that kind of summarises that virtual teams, and particularly at the moment, gives us a window into being genuine and real. And with that privilege needs to come some self-acceptance and compassion, that we value and look for that vulnerability and genuineness in others, and we really appreciate it, but we need to also allow ourselves to show it in order for people to follow us and to not feel like they have to be perfect at the new technology, at having it all together in those team meetings all the time. Thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, totally agree. I think you know, coming into this crisis and working through this crisis, I thought we would come out of the other side, you know, a lot more tech savvy, right? Because we're all being forced to use these tools. But I think the other thing that's starting to emerge now is that I think we might come out of this crisis closer, you know, actually understanding people for who they really are rather than just another colleague walking around the office. You're seeing the backgrounds, you're seeing the kids, you're seeing pets. And what I love even more is just the sharing. And we're even doing a few culture shares and some people leader calls that we're running, and we've got all sorts of stuff going. We've got reptiles being shown and running sessions for kids and a whole bunch of stuff, and I think it's beautiful. I think, you know, not only will our tech savviness grow through this period, but I think our connection will grow as well, and that's what we thrive for as human beings, is connection, and it's still, if not richer, in this environment.
So that connection piece, let's kind of pull that thread through, because I'm also conscious as leaders, we've got an opportunity to get a deeper connection, and we've just been talking about that, and we still need to deliver, right? So there's that balance between learning new ways to connect, but still getting the job done. And I think that's a real pressure for many of us out there. So we've talked about a few of the top tips, and I'm going to jump on in here now. Tip 1. In navigating this new world, refocus priorities. So the idea here is, and I've been working with a number of my coaching clients, when you started, you know, 2020, and we focused on what are the big deliverables, what do you need to get over the line, that could all have changed in the matter of a quarter, whether that's from a client perspective, whether that's from the global market shifts. But I think it's really important to be talking with your team, and the question to ask around priorities is your team focused on what's most important right now? Because the goalposts might have changed. The marketplace is definitely shifting. And the other question around that is, well, if it is still important, or if there are new things that are kind of moved up the priority list, the second question becomes, are we aligned in the way we're working and connecting virtually, and have we got the resources to make sure those priorities still get delivered? So question for you, Adam, how has the Refocus conversation and thinking about priorities shifted with COVID and shifted with, virtual teams might need to operate in slightly different ways?
Yeah, look, so is the question more around sort of, task and relationship, Anna, or is it how do we just get the job done?
Yeah, no, good clarity. I think it's a little bit of both, because I think some of the tasks or the strategic priorities might have changed, in terms of what your clients need out of, this COVID space could be really different for what they were asking for in steady state a month ago. So there's a piece about, what do we need to keep our eye on? And the second bit, the relationship bit, may also change. So how are we going to do it? How are we going to work together in a new virtual world might have changed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I think in terms of staying connected, it's really, really important. As I mentioned earlier, we've sort of taken 25,000 people to work from home, and that it's a really big sort of challenge that you sort of throw down there. And we've had a lot of conversations with our people about how you sort of show up to customers and the vulnerability that comes up around that, because you're exposing yourself and your background and all that sort of stuff. So the task is really important, that we stay focused on continuing to do our work, do our job. We're very privileged to be in a position to still have a job and to still be able to drive that sort of outcome with our customers. But balancing it, I think, with that authenticity that came up before around, relationships, etc. So I think, yeah, both equally important.
Cyan's asking, I have team members feeling they need to work on weekends as they have so much spare time. How can we help them manage work life and find balance? I'm going to hold that question, Cyan, because I think this blurring of lines between what's a normal working day, for me anyway, is sort of all up in the air, and I'm going to hold that because it feeds into our third tip. But I wanted to shift gear and take the next step, I guess, around how do we stay focused on what's most important, this priorities piece in virtual teams, and share, Adam, the Team Gauge tool that we introduced off the back of the Dead Lead Intact team work we did with you last year. So I'm just bringing that up for our viewers now, Adam. So the Team Gauge tool is essentially a dashboard that, Adam, I'll get you to talk through in terms of how do you use it, what's it measuring, and how does this tool help you at the moment in terms of connectivity from both what's important and how we deliver as a virtual team?
Yeah, so this has been really critical in terms of keeping us focused on our priorities. So, a quick summary is at the start of this year, we set up some priorities. We wrapped around those priorities around this dashboard, which means that every fortnight we go in and we rate ourselves on our ability to execute these priorities. And then we share each fortnight the results, as they stand there, which are, in black and white or green and yellow. A bit more green is always good. But anyway, what we've noticed over time is that this gives us an opportunity to really tap into what's working well in our group at the moment and what are the things that we need to work on. And it's, in some instances, it's been a bit of a shock that there's been a collective opportunity for growth in a particular area, and in some areas it's actually been quite reassuring that we're heading in the right direction, and this one team cultural feel is having an impact, and people are starting to feel more connected and more together. So it can be a great opportunity to drill into a bit more, but it can also kind of give you a bit of reassurance that you're heading in the right direction. So this has been critical for us.
Yeah, and I know that one of the things that when we did the Dead Lead work, we embedded the four measures of courage. So your team is effectively tracking and giving each other feedback on how courageous we are behaving as an intact executive team. But the other challenge was this piece around energy for growth. And it's great to see that's gone up 7, and some of those comments earlier about actually we're in a really good place to be navigating this next tricky piece. So the Team Gauge dashboard is virtual. You jump into it, you address it once a month. We're going to dive into that in a case study separate to this webinar. So we'll hold our discussion, because you know what we're like. We can get going on this, Adam. And we'll jump into our second tip for virtual team working, which is how do we redefine boundaries and the new normal? We talked about it earlier. We have this beautiful window into people beyond being a task and delivering something. We're seeing them as parents. We're seeing them as partners. The other day, my partner took a photo of me. I had my, lovely work gear on top, but under the table, I happened to have my track pants on. And I think that's the reality for many of us. We are many. There are many facets to us, and virtual working kind of highlights the realness of it all. There's a little comment I've got on the screen. Be prepared to get a window into people's lives, but hold back on being judgmental. And I think this is hard to do because we're judging people, right? I'd like to jump back into Cyan's question. This piece around team members and the blurring between a working week, wanting to always be on and working, finding they're working the weekends. Her question is, and interested, Adam, in your thoughts, in that scenario, what advice would you give her around how you help the team manage their rhythm and define, the new boundary of what's okay and what's not okay?
Yeah, look, I think it is a really good question. And I think as leaders, we need to really be conscious, particularly right now, that, and I know in my instance, work's invading the home space. The standards that I'm setting should be really conscious that work's actually invading people's homes and lives, and I think having an opportunity to set expectations with your team that's okay. That if the doorbell goes or if the dog barks, it's life, right? Work is now in your home. So I think that's a really important first step. And then I think giving people the opportunity to find their rhythm is important, kind of unencumbered by the pressure of time. So if we move to more managing output and measuring what comes out of people's work as opposed to kind of making sure that 9 to 5's being done, it takes the pressure off people. And then hopefully we start to see less of the very, very long days and lots of tiredness. People starting to focus on what really counts and what's most important, as opposed to feeling like they need to be on all the time.
I think that's really great advice. It's that differentiation between helping people understand their output, and look, that output might be, again, depending on priorities, might have shifted, but knowing that it's not getting measured in a standard working day anymore, and what might work for one team member and how they're balancing it may be very different from another and how they're balancing it. So great advice there. Third tip, or actually I've shared here, I hope you don't mind, Adam, introducing your new normal. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but would you mind sharing a little bit of Friday sundowners and some of the other new normal expectations that your team's been working through?
Yeah, just quickly, Anna, we're trying to have a bit of fun, be a little bit vulnerable, let ourselves be really seen. So, we're just mapping out at the moment, what are these things that we need to focus on to support our team, to be able to help our customers. The one you pointed out, the Friday sundowners, that's just an idea on a Friday afternoon to grab a drink, come along. I put a Hawaiian shirt on last Friday, put a few bottles of alcohol behind me and a bit of a tiki bar thing going on. Felt like an absolute idiot, but that's okay. The team got a laugh. And I think that's what's important right now. So just this for us is about thinking differently about how to get some fun back into the workplace.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we forget sometimes when we're anxious and unsure about all of this that fun is such a bonding piece for teams, and you might just have to get a bit innovative on how we tackle that. Last top tip before we let our viewers get back to their lunch and other lives. Agree communication touch points, and as you mentioned earlier, Adam, that's going to evolve. So you might need a much more high touch point in the first few weeks as people are figuring out, I need a laptop, I need a camera, I don't know whether I can join the 9 o'clock meeting because I'm still, homeschooling, and that might evolve as people get more comfortable. So how have you handled those conversations? Have they been explicit, and what sorts of formal meeting touch points have you structured into your working, both with your immediate team, but also working up into your executive group as well?
Yeah, look, again, this is evolving. I don't think we've nailed it, but I think up front, virtual shouldn't get in the way of kind of running a team, running a business, we've just got to think about a few, different ways of showing up. But I think, still preparing for some of the conversations that we need to have that may be a little bit harder. We still prepare for those in the right way. Think about what the message needs to be, understand the environment in which you're in and your the people in that you're talking to. So I think thinking through those things are really important. But my tip would be, let's not back away from having the conversations that we need to have. In fact, if we're going to come out of this COVID crisis stronger than how we came in, we have to step up, we have to lean in, and we have to be more courageous than we've been before, and not allow some of these what might be excuses or what might actually be real things that could get in our way to actually get in our way, and really decide, what's going on here. Am I letting this control me, or can I control it?
Yeah, great point. So that's that piece around what's in my circle of influence, and knowing that there is going to feel like a lack of control and that this is evolving. But actually there's also a piece in here about inviting your team to give you the feedback and inviting your team to come up with the solutions. Because I think as leaders, we so often think we need to be the expert and we need to be always leading from the front. And I think there's another piece in here, which is the paradigm that says, I don't have all the answers, and actually it's an activity, an extension of trust to invite my team in to share with me. Very conscious of time, so I had to share before we leave your quick sundowner pick. Pretty snazzy, I don't know, what do you call that thing around you there?
The lay?
Yeah, yep. The lay.
Yep, we can move pictures now, that's great.
And the final quote, that social isolation requires more connection, not less. So get creative. Those 3 top tips, make sure you're focusing on what's most important. Those goalposts might have changed. Redefine the boundaries with your team, ask them what they need and work out what the new normal is. And the last one is get proactive about deciding what your touch points as a team will be, and be prepared that they may shift over time. So that's us for today. This was just a short, punchy webinar. Adam, any final words before we sign off and allow people to get back into their working lives?
I reckon, Anna, just 3 quick tips from me, which would be just stay really connected to your point. Check in with your people. Let them define how much or little they need, but just be really conscious to check in. Remember that particularly now work's invading the home, so be really conscious of that and see if we can really understand that and use it to help people. And lastly, have fun. This is all going to be over soon. We will get through it. It is a tough time, but if we can put a few smiles on people's faces as we go through this, we're going to get through it far easier than otherwise. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my absolute privilege, and thank you for joining us. As we leave today, invitation to our community is to go out there and start some vulnerable conversations with your team about what they need, what their boundaries are, and what feels like it could work in a virtual world. I know you've got this. We're all with you. Reach out. We'll have more webinars coming your way, or you can find us at Collective Courage, www.collectivecourage.com.au. Signing off on this Friday. Have a great day.